Hello, magpies. You know, when I switched to 5th edition D&D a few years ago, one of the very first things I noticed was how all of my players seemed to use intelligence as their dump stat, which led to some very fun games of grown-ass people banging their fists on the table chanting, 2 brain cells, 2 brain cells, as nobody made plans and everything ended in a total disaster every time. Which was, honestly, a great time had by all. But the more I ingratiated myself into 5th edition communities, I realized that this was not an isolated phenomenon. This was the default position, informed by a general consensus that unless you are playing a wizard or an artificer, your intelligence stat is mostly useless. After all, very few skills are governed by intelligence, and intelligence saving throws are quite rare. So of course it's going to be everyone's favourite dump stat. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, well, everyone is wrong, except me. Let me explain, dividing my explanation into 2 parts. The first part is called, I don't think that word means what you think it means. So the problem is really pretty straightforward. Without a mechanical impetus to invest limited resources into intelligence, people go, okay, fine. I'll play a dumb character. Which is fine and great. But people really tend to overestimate how dumb is dumb. I've seen people play average intelligence characters as completely incompetent, which is cool and all, but I'm going to, well, let's just say I'm going to choose not to read into that how that suggests you think about your average intelligence friends. It's more so, the issue is more so that it's great to have a comic relief character, and the media we consume informs our ideas of what that should look like. So the moment people dip below high IQ, they tend to start playing either Patrick Star or Johnny Bravo with very little in between. But it's like, when you do something that is super dumb that affects everyone else in the name of playing a dumb character, like, I don't know, like swallowing the item that saves the world because somebody joked that it looks like candy. Don't blame it on your intelligence stat. You chose to do that. And if you're all on the same page, then your friends are going to be fine spending months of game time fixing your mistakes. To a limit. But just to be clear, when that limit gets crossed, you did that, not your character sheet. Which brings us to a really interesting discussion to be had about the myth of linear intelligence. As I understand it, IQ scores are understood by most sociologists to be very limited measures of intelligence. I mean, IQ tests are real, nobody would deny that. But for the most part, they only really measure your ability to take an IQ test. Intelligence isn't a 2-dimensional line with dumb on one end and smart on the other. And people who make a living telling you otherwise, it's like, how dumb do they think we are? Intelligence is very broad. It's subjective and it's entirely abstract. Therefore, an extremely low intelligence character might just be extremely uncurious. They might have a fantastic grasp of things that they are interested in, but having built a complete worldview around those interests, they now have no desire to learn anything new beyond how new things relate to what they already know. which when combined with a high wisdom score might cause them to be articulate, sensible, mature, emotionally developed, and in every way able to perform every function of a high intelligence character, just in their own way and on their own terms. Or, here's a spicy take, here's a hot take. Ever notice how university students tend to be more politically liberal? Grifters will have you believe that it's brainwashing, but as a person who personally attended a prestigious, wealthy and conservative university, I can tell you that both counts are completely untrue. But even at my conservative campus, there was a tangible, higher concentration of left-wing students among the disciplines that teach critical thought above all else, namely the arts and the humanities. So therefore, it's an option. You could just play your low intelligence character as holding more conservative views, namely being motivated by appeals to emotion, using intuitive reasoning, instinctively deferring to the authorities of their personal social in-group, and experiencing an instinctive discomfort with things outside of their own direct experience. Look, here's the bottom line. You are not beholden to anyone else's neat and clear ideas of what qualities and abilities are allowable by your intelligence score in terms of your character's personality. Because at the end of the day, we made these ideas the fuck up. Intelligence, it's literally like your horoscope. You look into it and you'll get bombarded with a billion essentialist claims about how it defines you as a person. And then you get to pick and choose which qualities to accept and which to reject. And then you get to choose again on how to construct a narrative of your own selfhood. The beauty of D&D is that we all get to choose who we are on our own terms. The second part of this explanation is called Hot Take. Sometimes it's a good idea to think about things. You see, when I DM, I'm always trying to find new and innovative interpretations on how skills work. For example, let's say somebody you care about is sad, and you're trying to get them to open up about their feelings. Persuasion check, right? Except, I don't know, it just feels weirdly aggressive to argue someone into feeling better. So, what about insight? People usually just use the insight skill passively to tell when somebody is lying or to know what they're feeling. But what if you used it proactively to know when not to speak? And when to give somebody the space to talk in their own time? And the dice roll, then it merely determines the outcome of you being there for your friend. Oh, but Mr. Vikos, ooh woo, the player's handbook clearly says, I don't care. The rules exist only to provide an entry-level utility towards the end goal of storytelling, and thus can be mastered very easily by literally anyone, after which they can be discarded whenever a greater storytelling utility presents itself. Full stop. Or, if I need to put on my baby gloves, I could point out that there are a limited number of skill proficiencies available to a character, and presenting multiple paths towards success increases probabilities of positive outcomes. The point is that even maths is art. And those who are good at maths will find creative, abstract and elegant ways of achieving better outcomes. I mean, Christ, some of the greatest advances in STEM fields come from creative thought. Sometimes it's just a matter of changing your perspective. See what you made me do. I just talked positively about maths in D&D. Blah. Don't say I never do anything for you. So anyway. So, with the need for creative solutions in mind, I have come up with some new ways to use the intelligence stat, aiming to facilitate an ability score paradigm shift among my players. So first, we really need to dispel the myth that intelligence-based skills are not particularly useful. Who says that you can't use the Arcana skill to identify potions or certain magic items without needing the Identify spell? Who says that the Nature skill can't be used to produce outcomes similar to the Survival skill, or used to observe the behavior of animals in place of a perception roll to tell if predators are nearby? Who says you can't use the Religion skill to secure the intercession of a literal god to save you from a TPK? At the end of the day, it depends on what the story can justify and the level of trust you have built up between players and DM to allow thinking outside the box to create unexpected outcomes, without it just turning into another brain-dead tug of war over limiting power versus winning the game. Finally, let's talk about the History skill, and as an historian myself, I am both biased and perfectly qualified to opine on the intersection of history with all forms of knowledge. The History skill represents education, from science to etiquette, to street smarts, to arithmetic, to news and current affairs, to avoiding social gaffes, identifying monsters, dungeons, famous magic items, and celebrity NPCs, or just being able to hold an intelligent conversation, chat up a librarian, or to read a book and to know when the author is lying. Besides these, let's not underestimate the value of a flat intelligence roll. The amount of times a player of mine has forgotten some crucial detail between sessions or done something unimaginably foolish that on one hand would be very funny to watch play out, but at the same time I know they're going to feel somehow hard done by, that their character would have been paying attention or would have known better. Like walking into the same trap 3 times in a row, or lighting a match in a grain silo when they should know that wheat is highly flammable, or the classic, throwing a portable hole into a bag of holding. So sometimes, to avoid player death, I will just let them roll an intelligence check. If they fail, fair game. Intelligence checks save lives. I mean, a lot of the time, merely the act of asking a player to roll an intelligence check will shock them into reconsidering. In fact, a lot of your time as DM is just going to be finding creative ways to give your players every chance not to die. Which brings us, at last, to the one intelligence-based role that I have most drastically overhauled: the intelligence saving throw. You should regard this as an optional rule that In some ways, it contradicts some of what I just said about intelligence checks. Because you see, if you are going to follow the logic that an ability check exists to achieve an outcome, and a saving throw exists to avoid an outcome, then giving your players the chance to avoid doing something stupid would be an intelligence saving throw. But here's where it gets interesting, because how far can you extend that line of thinking? So far, I've only really referred to avoiding an outcome by omission. Rolling to remember that the door is trapped so that you don't walk through it. Rolling to remember that wheat is flammable so that you don't light the match. But what if you could roll an intelligence saving throw to avoid an outcome by addition, adding, rather than removing actions from the narrative? I mean, the moment you give a player a chance to reconsider a stated action, you've already accepted that some kind of retroactive rewrite of the stated actions is acceptable. So, how far are we willing to go with that? I mean, again, it depends on the level of trust between players and DMs, it depends on what is justifiable within the story, and it depends on how high they roll on the check as well. How many times have your players entered a dungeon and they were like, oh god damn it, we forgot to buy healing potions again? I think that for the most part, most DMs would allow them to go back in time and fix the problem. But many DMs would also make empty threats about how, oh, next time you're on your own, as if their players are going to do anything different next time. Me, I would rather have them roll an intelligence saving throw to retcon a shopping trip. Which again, it begs the question, how far do we want to go down this road? What if a party was ambushed by superior foes? They were backed up against the wall and were staring down the barrel of a TPK. And then the rogue steps forward and goes, aha! You just walked right into my trap. Would you let them roll an intelligence saving throw to go back and set up the trap? I mean, why not? When the alternative is everybody dies and the story is over. Imagine the tension and everybody pooling all their resources together to boost that roll in any way they can. Wouldn't your players be talking about that clutch moment for years to come? I'm a big fan of non-linear storytelling, and really what I'm proposing here is nothing new within established narrative styles. We've all seen the heist movies where they show the outcome first and then go back and show them performing the heist only after the tension has been built up. I think that provided my players have a modicum of maturity and a love of consistent, interesting stories, I would be perfectly fine with even whole game sessions occurring out of order, going back and setting up the trap to avoid the TPK. It would be a really interesting and challenging storytelling experience, both in terms of maintaining continuity and avoiding metagaming. And it would represent a real test of the trust relationship between players and DM. And if played right, it could be legendary. So, let me sum up. At the end of the day, it's all about rewarding creative solutions, as well as finding that line that works for you, for your party dynamic, and for your players, as well as being fully cognizant of the consequences, like how it would cause rogues and wizards to have literally the best suite of saving throws in the game, or how, quite rightly in my opinion, as art reflects life, it would make intelligence quite literally the best stat in the game.